Entering the workforce can be intimidating, especially when you're starting out in your job search. So, I'm going to provide a list of tips that I think are very helpful for anyone who's starting out and things that I wish someone told me early on. So, let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel, everybody. This is Jonesia from QA. If this is your first time watching my video, hello, welcome. My name is Imani Jones, and I do videos on career, educational, and quality topics. So if this sounds of interest to you, hit that subscribe button, and I'll be able to provide more content to you moving forward. So let's get started with the list. So for my first tip is to keep a list of start and end dates for any internships, volunteer opportunities, and of course jobs that you held. This will come in handy when you're filling out applications, particularly in the government sector, where they'll want a specific day, month, and the year. So doing this will save you a lot of time and headache. My next tip is to keep a list of supervisors, their first and last name specifically. This is something that I didn't even think about until last year when it hit me. Specifically, I had a public trust that I was trying to get, and I had to have a background investigation done for any jobs that I had. I briefly worked at this one job, and I had to go to that job and then call different locations in order to track down that supervisor I had at that time, and it was just a lot. So save yourself time by recording the first and last name of your supervisor. So for my next tip, this is just good rule of thumb. From the moment you enter an in-person interview, have your phone away. You want to seem attentive. You don't want to seem like you're that person who is always on their phone. So it just looks more professional when you don't have your phone out. Another good rule of thumb is to show up 10 to 15 minutes early for an in-person interview and be ready 10 minutes early for a virtual interview, just in case any technical difficulties happen. I know with Teams, I've run into some issues where if you have a new computer and you need to re-download Teams, it's just best to give yourself at least 10 minutes to get situated. Another tip that I have is to always have questions for your interview. It shows that you're putting in thought into the company. It shows you actually care about your interview. You care about learning more. So definitely have some very thoughtful questions for that interview. For my next tip, if you are in a situation where you are taking a polygraph test, just be honest. This may seem like a given, but make it so that anything you have on your resume, you can speak and perform to. I want you to learn from a family member's mistake. So I was told about a family member who interviewed for the SAS programming job. Great position to have if you know your stuff. So they ended up interviewing, they got the job, and they didn't know anything about SAS programming. So they ended up in that job. They had another family member of mine overnight a SAS programming book, and they were expected to do this project that they had no credentials to do. So they ended up getting fired. I don't want that for you. So just make sure anything you have on your resume you can speak to. If you don't have the skills right now, that can be developed, but you don't want to be in a situation where you get fired and then you've got to explain that to the next job. Save yourself the headache and just be honest on your resume. So my next tip is to draft the bones of a cover letter to make sure you have something to work with for any of the jobs that you're going to be writing them for. It may take time for each position, but it will be worth it so that at least you have a working draft, and it'll make it quicker for you to kind of customize it for the specific jobs. Next, draft the bones of a thank you letter. It's not as popular these days to send thank you letters, but it is something that helps you stand out, which is something you should keep in mind for any opportunity you get to interview for. So piggybacking off of that last tip, take notes during your interview, and afterwards, write a brief reflection on key points so that you can put those notes into your thank you letter. That'll make it a lot easy for you. You may be going through multiple interviews and it'll keep things straight in your head. Having this thank you letter will keep you fresh in their mind when they're reviewing candidates again. So for my next tip, don't quit unless you have another prospect lined up. It's easier to find a job when you have a job than when you don't have a job. So keep that in mind for any time that you're actually like, I'm about to quit, I'm about to do it. Keep that in mind. Also, if quitting is necessary, make sure you have your elevator speech ready for your next interview, because chances are they're going to ask you why you left that job, and you want to make sure you have a decent excuse. Like if you were focusing on school or if you were helping a loved one, whatever that reasoning may be, make sure you have that ready. For my next tip, work your way up where you can in your career within reason. Don't do more than is needed, because you're not going to get paid more money for that. Don't accept a position that's just going to stress you out more. I remember when I was working in retail, I think it was my second job in retail, and I did my job. I made sure that everything was done the way it needed to be done. I clocked in, clocked out, wasn't an issue. They offered me a department manager position. I said absolutely not, because I literally saw one day one of the department managers was bawling at her eyes crying because one of the assistant managers just had it out for her and just wanted to make her feel bad. So my piece was not about to be compromised for $2 more an hour. And I don't think you should do that either. There's going to be a time where you are going to level yourself up. For the time being, do what you need to do, keep your head low, and get your check and leave. So another tip that I wish I thought about when I was earlier in my career was starting a business. I'll admit, I don't think that I personally had any business ventures in mind at this time, but I know that there are plenty of people who can braid, plenty of people who are very good with technology. There are definitely skills that can be marketed, and you can have some sort of a part-time job and you can work your way up if you so choose to. So I'm always going to recommend starting a business, because having your own is better than having nothing. And as a person who's been laid off, I'm always going to recommend having a backup plan. I learned my lesson this year, so I hope that this helps and encourages someone who is thinking about going into business to just go for it, because you never know what can happen. You could have a steady paycheck coming in with your regular job that you're doing. So make it happen. Another tip is to understand the importance of networking. I know that I talked about my experience in quality assurance and how I ended up getting an auditor position. And the only way I did that was through networking, by having a mentor, someone that could vouch for me, someone that could put me on audits to get me the experience needed for a quality assurance specialist position. So make sure that you're making strategic networking moves. And sometimes it can just happen naturally. Like for me, you just meet people, you talk, and it just goes from there. But yeah, utilize LinkedIn too. There's so many recruiters out there. There's so many people who would love to talk about their experiences. I've done it before. People are usually pretty nice about that. So yeah, keep networking in mind. For my last tip, and I just feel like I need to say this because I've seen so many videos of this and it just makes me cringe, to be honest, because it's like, what are you doing? You're on the clock. You're wearing your attire. Why are you doing this? Do not TikTok on the job. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. If you're in uniform, you should not be TikToking. If you are on your job's property, you should not be TikToking. If it is during business hours, you should not be TikToking. Do that on your personal time and make sure that you're not going to embarrass your company. So all these things, I think that they're very useful, very important, especially for someone who's starting out in the industry, trying to find their way. Some of these things, they might seem kind of like, well, that should be intuitive, but sometimes you need to hear something again for it to stick. So I'm hoping that these tips were helpful to someone. If you made it to this point in the video, leave a briefcase emoji so I know that you've made it to the end. I wish that I had someone who could have had these kind of conversations with me early on in my career, especially this day and age with social media. I think that last one weighs pretty heavily. Also the phone thing, like being on your phone all the time. You know, as a professional of any age, we shouldn't be on our phones. We should have a certain image about ourselves as being able to step away from technology and to be able to focus on a job. So I think that just keeping these kinds of tips in mind would be very helpful. So yeah, that's all I've got for today. I hope everybody had an amazing Labor Day, and I wish you a great evening, a great morning, and yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.